Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Thank you everyone for joining us tonight for our presentation of the draft recommendations for the Wheaton Regional Park Master Plan update. My name is Chuck Kynes. I'm a park planner and project manager. And with me tonight is my supervisor, Hujan Garland, supervisor of park planning, Melissa Chotner, the manager of outreach and community engagement, and Aaron Pant, our public relations and outreach specialist, and also our Zoom expert. So I want to welcome everyone again. Before we get started, we have a VIP joining us tonight, Luisa Cardona, who's the new Mid-County Regional Services Director. I want to give her a chance to introduce herself and make a few remarks.
Thank you so much, Charles, and thank you for those kind words. Not sure if I'm a VIP, but I am very happy to be here. My name is Luisa Cardona. I am the new Regional Service Director for Mid-County. So I am here to serve all of you, which is why I'm so grateful for this opportunity to introduce myself. I am here at your service. I'll put my contact information in the chat. I am excited that you guys are a part of this meeting and excited to really see what's coming forward. And I also hope to see you guys at some of these upcoming events that, there's two great events taking place just next weekend. The Friendship Picnic, which I know is September 19th in the park, and as well as the Wheaton's Arts Parade, which is taking place in the Triangle. So lots of fun events where I hope to meet you all in person as we are practicing our COVID safety protocols. And just para todos los que hablan español, mi nombre es Luisa Cardona, soy la directora regional de Mid-County. Acabé de empezar esta posición, pero estoy acá para servirles. Así que voy a poner mi información en el chat para que por favor cualquier cosa que necesiten me contacten. And back to you guys and your amazing team and the great project that you guys are putting forward, and I look forward to the community feedback. Thank you.
Outstanding. Thanks, Luisa. We do have the chat disabled, so if you want to put your contact information in the Q&A, everyone will be able to see it there.
Great, thank you.
Sure. So tonight's agenda, I'm going to start by giving you all sort of how to navigate Zoom, just to make sure everyone's connected in the proper way. Then I'm going to give you a status update of where we are in the planning process for the Wheaton Regional Park Master Plan and where we're heading from here after tonight's meeting. I'll talk about the community context and the park context. I'm going to talk about community engagement. We've been conducting outreach and community engagement for this park master plan for just about 2 years now, and we've collected over 2,000 comments, and we're eager to share the results of that with you all tonight. And what we want to find out from you all is, did we get it right? We're going to share the draft recommendations and the new 21st century vision for Wheaton Regional Park. Did we get it right? And then we will take questions and answers after each subject matter area, and we'll talk about that. So tonight's meeting is available in both English and Spanish. There should be a button at the bottom of your screen for you to toggle back and forth if you want to listen to the meeting in Spanish. We do have interpreters who will be interpreting the entire meeting in Spanish. Our presentation tonight is being recorded and will be available for future viewing at our project website, and I'll share that at the end of the meeting, where to find that, or one of my colleagues can put it in the Q&A so you can see where to find the project website. You won't be able to speak or share your screen during this meeting, but we do hope that you will participate by asking questions and putting comments in the Q&A box. Again, the chat function is disabled. Feel free to type your questions throughout the meeting. We will answer them after sharing recommendations for each park activity area. We've been working on the plan update for several years now, most of that time talking with the community, asking for ideas and suggestions for improving the park. We've had a dozen working group meetings, and I'll talk about who's on that working group meeting in a minute. They are consisting of representatives of community groups and county agencies who help shape the planning process and keep us focused on issues that are important to the Glenmont and Wheaton communities. We had focus group meetings with the help from an external consultant, SKIO, in Charlottesville, Virginia. They helped us do targeted outreach to communities that have been less engaged in park master planning in the past, specifically the Jewish community in Kent Mill, the Hispanic Latinx community around the park, and the Asian American youth in the county, high school students. We've had several meetings with civic groups, and specific communities in the area over the last 2 years. We've done community engagement in multiple languages, including Spanish and Mandarin. As I said, we've had nearly 2,000 survey responses and more than 100 comments on our interactive map that I shared at our meeting in January. As you can see from this graphic, we are close to the finish line. Tonight's meeting is about sharing our recommendations and asking the community if we got things right. We will use what we learned tonight to fine-tune the plan before presenting it to the planning board, our decision-making body for parkland in Montgomery County, MNC PPC parkland. The planning board is the final decision maker for all things that affect parkland. And we hope to present that to the board this winter. So here's the future opportunities for public engagement after tonight's meeting to help us shape the plan. As I said, we're going to share the draft plan with the planning board in the winter. This is later than our anticipated time frame of October. And the reason for this is because we need to do more detailed design and engineering for certain plan elements so that implementation can be quicker once the board approves the plan in the winter. So we are already working with our budget folks and our capital improvement program folks on identifying over the next 6 years what the recommendations that we're including in the plan could be included in the future CIP. We're already starting that discussion now. So the delay will help implementation happen faster. Our 6-year capital improvement program does have a dedicated PDF for Wheaton Regional Park, and park renovations are already happening and will accelerate over the next few years. Wheaton Regional Park is one of 5 regional parks in the county. It's located in the eastern part of the county. It's also located in an equity focus area where we prioritize funding for park improvements. Regional parks are intended to serve the entire county, but Wheaton Regional Park is a little bit different. It not only serves the entire county, but because there's such a large population that surrounds the park in Wheaton, that many residents use the park like a local park. So we did a little analysis on Wheaton Regional Park. Within a mile or two, about 100,000 people live within Wheaton Regional Park, and by comparison of other regional parks in the county, the population around Wheaton is double, at least double, than the other regional parks in the county, including Black Hill, Rock Creek, Little Bennett, and Cabin John. It is the only regional park accessible by Metro Rail. In fact, it's served not by one, but by 2, as you can see on this map. It's surrounded by a dense population. Many residents walk or bike to the park. It is convenient to tens of thousands of residents. We've heard that residents feel like this regional park really is their local park. This is where they go to recreate, the people who live within walking and biking distance. The park is very environmentally constrained. As you can see from this topographic map, there isn't much flat land. Most of the flat land has already been developed in the park, and there isn't much new land to develop. Therefore, future improvements will really be about redevelopment and rethinking certain areas of the park, repurposing facilities, and converting land from one type of use to another, or finding ways to improve, enhance, and upgrade existing facilities, and generally just making the park more attractive, comfortable, and functional. For the purposes of this plan, we have divided the park into distinct park activity areas. Each of these areas has its own unique qualities, but collectively make up the regional park. In fact, that's one of the challenges, making sure people understand that each of these areas are part of one park, Wheaton Regional Park. Over the next 90 minutes or so, I will walk you through the key draft recommendations for each of these areas. In the interest of time, I am not sharing all draft recommendations, rather just the ones for which the community has shared ideas, comments, and suggestions. Again, we want to hear from you tonight. Did we get things right? We will limit questions and answers after each park activity area to 5 minutes so that we can keep on time and conclude the meeting by 9 p.m. Whatever questions we don't answer live, we will answer in writing and post those answers to our project website following the meeting. We are also going to be developing a new town hall, open town hall, public comment tool, which will appear on our project website sometime next week. But first, we want to share what we heard from you, the community. What were your suggestions and ideas to improve the park? What areas of the park do you use and enjoy the most? What facilities are most important to you and your family? And what facilities are missing that you feel would add value to the park? And these photos on this page reflect some of the comments that we heard. More active, more inclusive, accessible, more food trucks, and so forth. Loud and clear, what we heard most from the community is that they want it to be easier and safer to get there by walking, biking, and transit. They would like the park to offer mountain biking opportunities, but at the same time, protect and retain the existing forest and protect the contemplative hiking experience and bird habitat. The community also asked us to consider adding new facilities, which are listed here, and most of which we have accommodated in the recommendations, and you'll see that over the next couple slides. The community asked us to expand and improve existing facilities, including modernizing, updating, and expanding the nature center, enhancing the dog park with lights, and to give the dog park an area for small dogs and large dogs, and change the surface type, reconfigure the playground to improve parental supervision and to make it more accessible and inclusive, to add challenge features to the playground so that the playground is not just for young children, but for older children and maybe even teens as well. The community asked us to modernize and enhance Pine Lake, enhance the fishing experience, and also the environmental education values that the Pine Lake area provides. And finally, the community asked us to retain and upgrade the Equestrian Center. We also heard that the community wants us to improve public safety and public comfort, add wayfinding signs. I'd say that was the other big one besides bicycle and pedestrian and transit access. The community felt like we could do a better job with wayfinding. But at the same time, they don't want us to overdevelop the park, and they want opportunities for concessions or food truck areas and to allow food in Brookside Gardens. The working group that we established that helped guide the planning process, they were focused on more broad issues, community-wide issues. They want us to recognize the context that the area is urbanizing, it's growing. There's, people are moving into the community more and more, and there's more development in Wheaton and Glenmont that's current and also planned. They also agree that we have to make it easier to get there by walking, biking, and transit. They want us to use the park as a catalyst for larger community improvements so that it triggers and encourages other types of improvements in the community. They want to make sure that the park is incorporated into the larger community. The park isn't an island, it's part of the community. It's not separate from the community, and we agree. And they want us to link the park to other parks and trails nearby. And finally, they want us to link the park to downtown Wheaton, physically and strategically, access and also partnering with businesses and retail. So with that, I will now begin to share the draft recommendations. Wheaton Regional Park is unique in that residents get there by walking, biking, and transit. As I said before, it's a regional park that serves the entire county, but it's also a local park to many residents in Glenmont and Wheaton. It's their local play space. Therefore, We've identified the overall theme of the plan as Montgomery County's regional park next door. The overall framework for the plan is consistent with how we've been approaching park planning since the approval of the Energized Public Spaces Functional Master Plan. We think of parks in 3 different ways. What facilities can help people be physically active and stay fit? What facilities help people feel closer to nature and foster contemplative, nature-based experiences? And finally, what facilities encourage and accommodate social gatherings and social experiences? Successful parks do at least one of these things, and regional parks should do all of them. Here is an executive summary of the plan. This is how we think of the park. And understanding this framework will help you understand our thinking and our draft recommendations for each area of the park. The Shorefield area we consider to be the family fun center, where there are family and community celebrations and social gatherings. The Rubini Athletic Complex is primarily for active and physical fitness. The forest and wooded area offers contemplative experiences in nature, but also opportunities for active lifestyles and fitness, trail running, mountain biking, and so forth. The Equestrian Center offers beginner and therapeutic and inclusive horse riding. Brookside Nature Center offers nature education and exploration and environmental education as well. And Brookside Gardens, of course, is a world-class botanical garden, and it will remain that way. Plus, the plan will include recommendations to improve bicycle, pedestrian, and transit access, wayfinding, and artwork that will celebrate the cultural diversity of the community it serves. I'm going to start with the broad park-wide issues and recommendations. These issues and recommendations affect all areas of the park. Specifically, how do people travel to the park, and how can we improve access to the park and make your travel experiences safer or more pleasant? This is one of the biggest concerns we consistently heard during our outreach and community engagement. We'll start with park entrances. Most people arrive at the main park entrances, intended for arriving by car. And this is the legacy of a park that was designed and built 50 years ago. But the world has changed. More people are traveling by modes other than driving. There is so much more we can do to make people who arrive by walking and biking feel more safe, welcome, and comfortable. So what this map shows is in yellow is areas where we propose enhancing the park entrance for people arriving on foot and on bicycle. And there are other recommendations on this map where we improve the experience of people who are on foot and arrive and traveling by bicycle through the park. While the plan is mostly focused on improvements inside the park boundary, we can and must do a better job helping residents to travel to the park more safely by walking and biking. This means partnering with our local and state transportation officials to improve and enhance sidewalks and crosswalks, as well as bicycle accommodations along roads that surround the park. So what this map shows is areas that we feel there are big opportunities to partner with our local agencies to improve bicycle and pedestrian access to the park. Another park-wide topic is trails. Wheaton Regional Park features dozens of miles of trails, both hard surface and natural surface. Trails are among the most popular and well-used facilities in Wheaton Regional Park. They can be used for physical fitness, contemplative experiences in nature, and also for social gathering, people walking in groups. The master plan recommends renovating some trails and adding some new trails, including introducing mountain biking. One of the things we've heard repeatedly from the community and also from trail users is better cross-park connectivity, not only from one area of the park to another, but also from Northwest Branch into Wheaton Regional Park, and also from Sligo, the Sligo Creek Trail into Wheaton Regional Park. This map shows the framework for improving overall connectivity, both east-west and north-south. This map shows where we propose to add new hard surface trails as part of this plan. So starting on the east side of the park, we're currently planning a new paved trail that will connect Sligo, go through the Rubini Athletic Complex, and then travel along the existing hard surface trail, travel down through the maintenance area and down the maintenance access road, and then up Kent Mill and into the Tivoli community and the community to the north to connect to the Matthew Henson Trail. We're also proposing improvements in the Shorefield area to better help bicyclists get through the Shorefield area and connect to other areas of the park, specifically Glen Allen and Brookside Gardens. So a new hard surface trail and new connections to the community, of course, to better provide access to different areas of the park. What's also shown on this map is places that we're proposing to renovate trails. So in light green are trails that we're proposing to renovate and upgrade because they've been deteriorating over time. This map shows our natural surface trail recommendations. New natural surface trails, renovated natural surface trails, and changes in modal designation. So in blue is the trails that we're proposing to make fully multi-use. So the outer loop trail that's currently identified as the Equestrian loop will become fully multi-use to accommodate mountain biking, as well as the Arcola Trail and the Deer Hollow Trail. In brown are trails that we propose to keep hiking only. These are the trails that primarily surround the nature center, but also the interior trail in the large forested area that bird enthusiasts particularly enjoy during bird migration season. In red is a trail that we're proposing to reroute and remove for environmental reasons. And in yellow are new trails that we're going to add at the Equestrian Center site so that beginner and therapeutic rides can have their own trails around the Equestrian Center and not have to worry about conflicts with other trail users. Experienced equestrians will continue to use the outer loop trail, but the beginners and therapeutic riders, we hope, will take advantage of these new trails. And finally, we're proposing a new gravel trail along Glen Allen Avenue on the shoulder to better connect people to both the Nature Center and Brookside Gardens from the Kent Mill area and the Kent Mill Road. I'm now going to pause here and respond to any questions that are out there. I'll hand it off to Darren to facilitate.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for participating in this this public meeting for Wheaton Regional Park. I'm seeing a number of questions so far coming in. Appreciate all those. Keep them coming. I do want to right now focus on the global recommendations that Chuck just walked through. I had, let's see, one question about the compatibility of mountain biking and equestrian activity. and the use of where the birders concentrate their activity in the park. And Chuck, maybe I can speak to that.
That sounds good.
Okay. My name is Darren Felice. I'm the acting division chief for park planning and stewardship, and have been the trails master planner for Montgomery Parks. So, we, during the feedback of the public outreach that Chuck went into detail on, we got a lot of feedback about the need to preserve some hiking only trails to provide that sort of contemplative environment, especially around the nature center trails, since those are heavily programmed trails. We wanted to preserve those as hiking only. We also felt that we could, provide the inner loop of the forested area that Chuck referred to as hiking only, and still meet our overall goals of helping make sure that there was connectivity for all modes, including mountain biking and biking in general, to all of the activity areas in the park. That was one of our overall objectives, was to make sure people could travel by walking and by biking and access different parts of the park. The purpose of the trail recommendations is really to make sure that we're helping connect these sometimes very separate sections of the park to help people get around. So we did, acknowledge the need for some hiking only for people that feel like, that's necessary to get full enjoyment out of the park. And then for the commenter that says mountain biking is not compatible with equestrian activities, in general, most of our trails are multi-use in the county and do, accommodate people riding horses and people riding mountain bikes. And we believe that will be the case here too. But as Chuck mentioned, we do acknowledge that there's some riders for whom those uses will not be compatible. So that's why we are proposing the additional trails that are kind of represented in that mustard color up at E1. So I hope that answers your question. Just want to see if there's any other, okay, some more as I was talking, what questions came in. Why are you proposing to open so many trails to mountain bikes? I guess I think I probably answered that. What is the suggestion for allowing walking from Arcola Avenue? I think Chuck will probably get into some more of the park access a little later on. We've had 2 well-attended public bird walks in the last 2 days. Both start at Shorefield and go down to Pine Lake. This is the best area for migrating birds and should not be increasing noise and disturbance there. That Pine Lake Trail is currently, multi-use, and so allows, all modes, and so that would continue. Okay, I will see if Chuck, there's some questions to get tonight's presentations. There's several global questions, and I think a lot of these questions we can address in future sections.
Okay, great. I will move on then. I'm now going to work my way around the park counterclockwise, starting with the Shorefield area, which is on this map in pink, surrounded in pink. We view the Shorefield area as the family-friendly area for family fun and social gatherings, picnics, celebrations. It does a good job meeting the needs of young children with the adventure playground, carousel, and miniature train, but it could do a better job meeting the needs of older children, teens, and young adults. Community comments ranged from making it feel more welcoming for people arriving by biking and walking to adding more things for kids and adults to do. We're proposing to add several new facilities in the lower parking lot near Henderson Avenue. The overflow gravel parking lot is proposed to be converted into 2 basketball courts and 2 soccer courts. We will add pathways to safely get people there as well. We are also proposing to add a small community garden about 1/3 acre in size It's primarily intended to serve people who would get here by walking and biking, but we will also accommodate parking for a few cars along Henderson Avenue. We're also proposing to construct an area for food trucks. This has become a very popular trend, both locally and nationally. Instead of food concessions, park agencies are establishing designated areas for food trucks. We propose to convert the current picnic shelter that's located in this area to a designated food truck parking area. We'll designate a certain number of parking spaces for the food trucks. And we'll also make sure that this site is well served by electric service so that trucks can turn off their engines and not idle. And it will help provide a more pleasant experience for people eating nearby at the picnic shelter or at the group shaded structure. We do propose to renovate the adventure playground based on what we heard from the community to make it more accessible and inclusive, and also make it easier for parents and caregivers to supervise their children. So what we heard is that the current design and configuration isn't all that great. Users asked us to add facilities and design elements to make it easier for people to supervise, and also add elements for wheelchairs and for those who are visually impaired. We will also add safe spaces and a sense of enclosure for those with intellectual disabilities. We will add we propose to add climbing elements for older children, as well as a nature play space. And finally, we're proposing to add more seating so that the playground can be a social gathering space as well. I'm now going to pause here before moving on to the Rubini complex. I'll pause here and answer any questions about the Shorefield area. I will say that in the interest of time, we're not able to share all the recommendations for the Shorefield area. There are more, including a group picnic shelter and improvements to Pine Lake. But in the interest of time, I am not sharing those tonight, but I will, if you have questions about those, I will respond to those in writing and post them to our project website. I'll now hand it off to Darren to facilitate any questions about the Shorefield area.
Sure, thanks, Chuck. First comment, on nice weekends, Shorefield parking lots are already full, so people park on the nearby side streets in spite of permit parking only signs. That's a comment. And then the question is, what about noise and rats associated with increased use? You consider those issues?
We have not considered the issue of rats, but that is a very important issue that I will make sure that is reflected in the design of the food truck area and picnic area. I'm sure our operations folks are aware of any rat issues in the Shorefield area already, but I agree that the food truck area does provide an opportunity for increased pest control needs, so we will address those. And in terms of parking, we are, one of the other recommendations that I'm not sharing tonight is we do recognize that the current parking lots aren't as efficient as they could be. So we are proposing to improve the parking lots, to make the flow, to add parking, a little bit of parking, to improve the flow of traffic, and also to be more clear about where it's appropriate to park and also not to park, so that our park police can better facilitate safe parking in the Shorefield area.
Okay. Sorry, my screen jumped out. Okay. Next commenter says you need small picnic shelters, so small groups, like one family picnic, without taking up an enormous large group.
Right. So the Shorefield area does have several picnic shelters that are intended for smaller groups. We are adding a large group picnic shelter off the upper parking lot that will be for larger groups, say 25 or more people, that sort of size, church groups, community groups, that sort of thing, family celebrations. But the other picnic shelters are intended to be smaller. But if you're suggesting that we need to add shaded structures over individual picnic tables, that is something we could consider. I don't know if we can accommodate that, but it is a good idea. I will add that to our list of comments.
Okay, question about the carousel. Does it stay or does it have to move up north?
Yeah, so the existing carousel was donated by the Ovid Hayes and Wells family with the expectation that it eventually would be located in the Ovid Hayes and Wells Recreational Park in Clarksburg. There is a facility plan underway for improvements at Ovid Hayes and Wells, and when that area is constructed, it will include the new location for the carousel. So the existing carousel at Wheaton will eventually be moved. That being said, we are also simultaneously working on finding a new carousel to replace the one at Wheaton. So yes, the current one that was donated by the family will be appropriately located in Clarksburg, but we are going to replace it in kind in Wheaton.
Okay. Another question about carousel. So thank you, Chuck. Okay. We had some playground questions. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to find questions that are focused on this area. Will you have to cross the parking lot to get to the food truck area?
We will provide safe access to the food truck area, primarily going around the parking lot. But that being said, we do recognize that some people will cross over the parking lot. As part of the overall parking lot improvements, we will make sure that the parking lot is designed to slow down traffic and also provide safe pedestrian access to the food truck area and picnic pavilion area.
So there's some questions about the impact of the food trucks on birding in Shorefield.
We feel like the food truck area is placed in an area that's separate from most of the large forest in the park, including a lot of the forest in the Shorefield area. It's in a mostly developed area of the park. So, but I will talk to our natural resources folks about potential bird impacts.
Question, would solar panels be added to covered food areas to help with power needs of food trucks or just to allow people to recharge their electronic devices?
We are considering a number of improvements related to solar panels in the park, including for charging phones and electronic devices. So yes, I think that is certainly something we will consider as part of improvements in all areas of the park. Maybe not the wooded area, but everywhere else.
Okay, questions about larger shelter items and changes to overflow parking substantially impacting the birding area. So I think you covered that. Someone's asking if the questions about trails are being ignored. They're not, but we want to focus on each of the areas, and we will try to loop back to other questions at the end as time allows, and anything else we will answer in writing. Question about the historic value of Wheaton Regional Park and facilities and activities in the park. The historic value is also very important to the people.
Yeah, we do intend to address the historic significance of Wheaton in interpretive signs throughout the park. In fact, we're even contemplating some changes in naming facilities and trails in the park that may reflect the history of the Wheaton area. So yes, we are well aware of the historic and cultural values of resources in the park, and we are working with our cultural resources folks to make sure that we maximize the interpretation of those facilities. In the Shorefield area, we do have a facility called the Stubbs Barn And we are, in the short term, we are proposing to do a study to study the integrity of the barn, and make sure it's safe for employee use. But in long term, we are planning to do a more detailed study to find ways to perhaps open the Stubbs barn to public use. But that's long term.
Okay, Chuck, just in the interest of time, I'll do one more on Shorefield and then we can move on and, like I said, circle back to as many as we can at the end. What are some specifics about how it would be easier for parents to supervise their children? For example, it's currently extremely difficult to supervise kids getting up on the slides and then running all the way around to get to the bottom of this.
Right. So grading is definitely one thing we've heard, is that the retaining wall, while it's a clever idea for the slides to start in one area and the kids slide down and drop down into another area, it's very difficult for parents to supervise kids, help them get up on the slide and then get down to where the kids are leaving the slide. So that's just one example of something that we think should be fixed in a renovation of the playground, that you shouldn't have those sharp grades. Gradual grading is okay, but the sharp grade with the retaining wall is really problematic. So that's just one example that we think can be corrected. Another example is a sense of enclosure. So another thing we heard, particularly from the Kent Mill community, the Jewish Kent Mill community, was that in order to better help kids with intellectual disabilities feel safe in a playground space, you have to provide a sense of enclosure. So we are working with our inclusion and accessibility staff to find ways to design a playground so it feels more safe for those types of children. All right. Now I'm going to move on to the Rubini Athletic Complex. We view this area as primarily for physical fitness, but it also has, or will have, or is proposed to have, elements for social gathering as well. This area of the park does have available land for new development, which you'll see in a minute. It also features some of the park's only unconstrained flat land, which we're proposing to take advantage of. Most visitors drive here, but we want to make it easier for people to arrive here by walking and biking, and also transit. Community concerns range from adding soccer fields to making this area of the park more active, with facilities that can be used during all hours of the day and by people of all ages. Many residents feel like this area of the park feels empty much of the week, and it could feel more welcoming. The biggest plan recommendation by far is we're proposing to convert 3 diamond athletic fields to an adventure sports park. Future facilities will likely include a large regional skate park, a bouldering climbing wall, an obstacle parkour course, a splash pad, a bicycle skills area, and lots of space for social gathering and social interaction and engagement. The next few slides will give you an idea of what we have in mind. So this is a video that shows a facility in, I believe, Arizona, that could be a good example of what we could accommodate at Wheaton Regional Park. So I'll play the video. So what this video shows is a skate park in concrete, and on the edge of the concrete is a asphalt pump track, and they're adjacent to each other. The idea is that users can seamlessly go from one facility to the other regardless of mode, so that skateboarders can use the pump track and bicyclists can use the skate park. This slide shows a skateboard park in Colorado. It's 43,000 square feet, about an acre. It's one of the best skate parks in the United States. The design includes a sculpture quarter pipe in the center of the skate park, a snake run that ends in a gigantic bowl. It has lots of ledges to spread out use all over, as well as rails and transitions. The park has shade structures and elevated places for skaters to watch other skaters, which is a big part of skate park use. Many skate parks, traffic safety gardens are miniature street neighborhoods made up of small size streets where children and adults can engage in active learning about roadways and traffic safety in a low stress environment. Children practice walking, biking, and driving, quote unquote, along roadways and through intersections and crossings, all in an environment free of motor vehicles. We've been working with our partners at the Montgomery County Department of Transportation to identify a location or locations for this type of facility somewhere in our park system. And we feel like Wheaton Regional Park might be a good place where it could fit. Many skate parks around the US are also adding climbing structures for bouldering and rock climbing, as well as obstacle courses for physical fitness and competitive events. Think American Ninja Warrior, but designed for older children, teens, and young adults. A really important component of skate parks is also that there are viewing spaces and lots of places for seating and social gathering. One of the park's only areas for new development is shown here. This area is currently wooded, but it's not considered high quality woods by our natural resources staff. We propose to convert this wooded area to 2 rectangular athletic fields, perhaps with lights, and also add a new one-way entrance off of Arcola Avenue into the park, as well as new parking lots. This illustration, this map is just illustrative. It's not intended to be a future site plan, but it's just intended to give you an idea of what we could do with this land and how it might function. We're also proposing to convert 3 tennis courts to 8 pickleball courts, which is one of the fastest growing sports locally and nationally. We're also proposing to resurface the basketball court, add fencing, and upgrade the lighting. And finally, we're proposing to convert the underutilized handball courts to a soccer court. Another area of consistent comments from the community was the dog park. Residents requested separate areas for large dogs and small dogs, lighting so that people can use the facility early in the morning and late at night, more seating, and improved entrance gates. We will use the popular dog park at Cabin John for inspiration, which is shown in the photo. This drawing is illustrative also and is not intended to show the final design, just something that might be possible. I'll now stop here and take a few questions about the Rubini Athletic Complex. Darren, can you facilitate the questions?
Sure. Yeah, we had a lot even before you got there, so I'll circle back to some of those. But I'll start with 2 comments about the age of the users that we're accommodating with these recommendations. One person says, I'm strongly in favor of increased variety of activities for tweens, teens, and young adults. And then another comment is, I can't see any seniors using much of the proposed activity area. Softball and paddleball facilities are needed. What is being proposed to meet the needs of senior athletes? That came before you got into the pickleball, but maybe you could kind of speak to how this area is providing services for those range of ages that were noted.
Right. Well, one common misconception about adventure sports parks and specifically skate parks is that it's intended for young people, but skateboarding, many of the early skateboarders are now reaching their 50s and 60s now, and they are also looking for places to recreate on their skateboards. So it's not just for people in their teens, 20s, 30s, and even 40s. It goes beyond that. Skate parks are really used by almost all ages, up until people are in their 70s even. So that's one response. But that being said, in terms of low impact facilities or lower impact facilities, of course, we have tennis and pickleball and lots of trails in the park, as well as other types of facilities, Brookside Gardens and Brookside Nature Center. So I don't think we're ignoring older people, but I think this park was designed in the 1960s to serve a certain type of population, and that population has changed, and we're trying to incorporate changes or propose changes that better reflect the character of the community that it serves.
Okay, Chuck, so I'm going to try and bundle some things here. We've got, will you add more tennis courts? Taking them away and not replacing them would be a problem. And then related to where you were showing the soccer fields, there's a question, aren't there requirements for how much the park must be quote unquote natural? And if you convert what is now forested, even if you consider it not a high value forest, isn't that a problem? It does have trees, probably counts as natural. So you want to speak to those two things?
Sure. So tennis courts, there are 399 tennis courts in Montgomery County on parkland countywide. And right now there are only a few places where people can play pickleball, which is one of the fastest growing sports. So what we're doing here is sort of balancing supply and demand. We feel like there's tremendous demand right now for pickleball. There's still demand for tennis, but the pickleball is a rapidly growing sport, and we need to provide more facilities. So no, we're not proposing to replace the tennis courts in Wheaton, but we do feel like there are other places that people can play, including high schools and middle schools, not to mention all the tennis courts on parkland. In terms of the natural resource question, our regional parks are governed by what we call the 1/3, 2/3 rule, which was established early on in our park planning back in the 70s. And basically what that means is that for our regional parks, 1/3 of the park can be developed while 2/3 remains in its natural state. And as you can see even on the slide how green Wheaton Regional Park is. We have plenty of available development capacity and still meet that 2/3 requirement for regional parks, even by removing that several acres of forest.
Thanks, Chuck. So early on, we had a lot of comments about the proposal to remove the 3 diamond fields, and a lot of questions about the impact that would have on the ability to have permanent events and league play there. So I think maybe speak to that. And then the other sort of counterbalancing piece of that, why is it necessary to convert the wooded area to the east side of the athletic complex to active sports use? This will eliminate the possibility of continuous trail connection from Wheaton Regional Park to Sligo. But the reason I mention it is this last piece, which says, in general, there's far too much emphasis in this plan to park development as opposed to preservation. So maybe you could speak to, why the trade-off with ball fields and how we're thinking about that, and balancing that with development versus preservation.
Right. So the removal of the ball fields, the proposed removal anyway, was something that is supported by our parks leadership. They really felt like we need to rethink this area of the park because it's the only area of the park that is unconstrained and flat and would be easily convertible into something else. So they asked us to sort of think, if we converted those 3 fields, what could we provide to better serve the community? And that's how we came up with the Adventure Sports Park. We do recognize that some ball field users will be displaced, but we will certainly find places for them to play elsewhere. We will respond to specific comments about ball fields in writing following the meeting. I am not the athletic fields expert, but if you have any specific questions or concerns, we certainly will address them in writing and make sure that the proper subject matter experts are also responding. But in terms of the natural resources, again, I'll point to the existing forest. We are not proposing to remove any of the interior forest of the park, but we do feel like the forested area adjacent to the church between the ice rink and tennis bubble is not particularly high quality. The trees are not particularly high quality. They don't provide quality habitat for birds and other species. So that's why our natural resources folks felt like if we're going to add new facilities anywhere in the park, this was the place. And like I said, it's not only accommodating new recreational facilities, but it's with the new entrance, it's helping us solve some of the circulation problems of the Rubini Athletic Complex.
Okay, probably in the interest of time, we should keep going, but I'll just note two things. The president of the Montgomery County Little League wants to note the record number of registrations for past spring and fall, and using all the permanent fields they can get their hands on. So expressing a desire to expand the number of fields in the county. And then someone asked, can you please talk more about the proposed plans for a splash area?
Right, the splash area would be part of the adventure sports complex. Of the 6 acres of those 3 ball fields is about 6 or 7 acres, and we feel like the combination of the skate park and other facilities, we have plenty of space to accommodate a few other facilities, including a splash park. That was a highly requested facility as part of our survey and interactive map. People felt like the only place where they can go for a splash park experience right now is either Northern Virginia or South Germantown, and that's it. And they felt like Wheaton might be a good opportunity to provide that, and we think we can fit it within the athletic complex.
I just want to acknowledge that we are getting a lot of continued discussion about multi-use trails in the comments, a lot of comments about ball fields. But before you move on, Chuck, I'll just slip one last one about the dog park, because no one haven't really talked in detail about the dog park yet. Just a question about it's too small if it's split between large and small dog areas. So can you talk about if the total area is going to increase when you make that split? Right.
No, the Wheaton Dog Park is actually one of our larger dog parks, and we do feel like there is an opportunity to divide it into small and large dog areas using the existing footprint. That being said, there might be an opportunity for us to rethink that area, including the trail from the parking lot, and there might be an opportunity to expand the dog park a little bit, but not a whole lot. We don't want to go into the forest to expand the dog park, so the only other direction is toward the sports pavilion. It's possible, but we don't feel like it's a good use of capital resources. All right. Going to move on to the maintenance yard. This isn't a public area, but it's a very important component of the park, and this is the Wheaton maintenance area here. The maintenance yard not only serves the park, but it serves a larger park management area with dozens of parks. This maintenance yard is one of the oldest in the park system. It's undersized for the number of parks it serves, and it's outdated and needs to be modernized. So what we're proposing to do is to expand a little bit into the forest. And again, our natural resources folks said, a modest amount of impact in this area is acceptable because this maintenance yard really is in dire need of upgrades and modernization. So, and we don't want to build it elsewhere in the park system. We feel like this is the right location for the maintenance yard. So we are going to expand a little bit into the existing forest. It will have some impact to the existing forest. We recognize that, and that will be mitigated, but this is what we're proposing to You know, we did consider multiple options, maybe even moving it elsewhere, but we really feel like we've invested in this area of the park, and we feel like expanding it and modernizing it in place is the best thing to do. So I'm now going to pause again. That was a very brief presentation of the maintenance facility, but I will field any questions people have about the maintenance facility, if there are any.
And none yet. If we proceed, Chuck, we can try and get back to more questions.
Okay, all right. The forests are one of the park's most popular areas. We've repeatedly heard from the community that aside from Brookside Gardens, this is probably the second most popular area of the park. People enjoy hiking on the natural surface trails to feel immersed in nature and to enjoy the quiet and solitude. At the same time, we received likely the same number of comments from people who want to see mountain biking introduced to this park. This is one of the few parks, regional parks and recreational parks, that doesn't accommodate it. We feel like the forests are an opportunity to not only foster contemplative nature-based experiences, but also offer opportunities for physical fitness. Some trails will become fully multi-use, meaning hiking, mountain biking, and horses, and some will be hiking only, particularly those around the nature center used for nature center programming. There are numerous other recommendations for the forest, including to manage wildlife habitat and maximize environmental services, but we don't have enough time tonight for me to go into detail about those recommendations. So again, I'll pause here. Any questions about the forest and wooded area?
Okay, yes, lots of discussion in the Q&A about, you know, the compatibility of equestrian activity and mountain biking. One of the questions was, you know, that the hiking only sections around the nature center and the inner loop don't seem connected. So I'll just speak to that very quickly. Yeah, they're connected by the whole trail system. The whole natural surface trail system is multi-use. So people walking can access the entire area. So they're not really disconnected in any way. I think the concern there is for people that want zero interaction with anybody on a bike, then they feel like they have to pick between their spots. But I think, you know, again, our experience with our multi-use trail system throughout the county is that while those conflicts are not unheard of, the system does generally work very well as a multi-use system. And so we anticipate that will be the case in Wheaton as well. And of course, we will monitor the situation and you know, make sure that behaviors are appropriate. One of the things that we've discussed, we've got some feedback and we'll include in the plan is making sure that we roll out this modal conversion in a way that people are really aware of what the rules are and what the changes are. So people are aware that they might start seeing mountain bikes in the park. And certainly working with our partners at More to make sure that mountain bikers understand that people do have reservations and that everyone needs to be on their best behavior in this park as on all of our trails. So, you know, again, you know, I think the message here is we definitely heard folks and, you know, in general, our policy is that when we redo a plan that we would convert our natural surface trails to multi-use trails. We made a concerted effort to make sure that we're maintaining some hiking only trails and making sure that for equestrian riders who don't feel comfortable in a mixed modal environment, that we're producing new trails for them. So, you know, definitely hear all the concerns. A lot are very valid, and we've tried to make a plan that accommodates all of those concerns. And I was not looking at, as I was talking about, more discussion about sharing modes. Would it not seem easier to allow biking on hiking trails rather than the horse loop? Well, the horse loop is a hiking loop as well. So that will be multi-use. Volunteer engagement, right, okay. So a number of these improvements will benefit from volunteer group engagement, mountain biking, birding, etc. Is there a plan to encourage increased community engagement or volunteer opportunities? It might help the community feel part of the park and not just users of the park, and also help with some of the shared concerns about different categories of users. Chuck, I'll let you respond to that, but I think that's a really excellent suggestion.
Yeah, well, one of the things that we're hoping to accomplish following the approval of the Wheaton Regional Park Master Plan is the establishment of sort of a Friends of Wheaton Regional Park to help advocate for funding for improvements in Wheaton Regional Park. So, and also opportunities for volunteering. So yes, we do feel like this planning process should be the launching point for the creation, hopefully, of a grassroots effort to establish a Friends of the Park group that can advocate for funding, similar to the group that already exists at Brookside Gardens. So yes, we do see this master planning process as an opportunity to better engage and bring the community into the park to help maintain it.
Okay, there's a question, will you be resurfacing the multi-use trails in some way? So Chuck, if it's okay, I'll just speak to that.
Okay.
We'll be renovating a lot of the natural surface trails, renovating in place, trying to minimize the changes we make to the alignment, but making sure that we do adjust trail alignments where they don't drain properly. You can see on that Arcola trail, that north-south trail, it's just a straight line. Usually if you see a straight line in a natural surface trail, it means it's not likely to have been designed properly. So we'll have to make some adjustments there so that natural drainage occurs using the natural topography. And so, yes, part of the recommendations will be significant renovations to the trail. And again, with the eye to how do we make sure that these trails are designed and cared for properly to allow opportunities for users to pass one another and so forth, and take into account the needs of the multi-use trails. And then for the paved trails, we have several recommendations, and in fact, plans and the design studies in the works for renovating the hard surface. One of the big things we heard about, the trail network was the need for surface improvements, both on our hard surface trail and a natural surface trail. Bike should be prohibited after it rains because we do close our natural surface trails during rain events. What were your reasons for deciding to designate specific trails for mountain biking? Specifically Deer Hollow. I will say that Deer Hollow was one of our more difficult decisions about how to classify that. Yeah, thanks, Chuck. And the answer is what I mentioned earlier about trying to facilitate connectivity. We've got a park that has very different zones, and in fact, Chuck's presentation is highlighting the fact that we're focused on these zones. But one of the pieces of feedback that we got was there really needs to be more interconnectivity within the park, and opportunities for people to make those connections. And the distances are such that some of those connections are really only be made by bike. Certainly some people will walk, but consistent piece of feedback we got was there needs to be opportunities to connect to all the destinations by bike as well as by walking through the park. So we did have to make some hard decisions, and I will acknowledge that Deer Hollow was one of them. The park does minimal trail maintenance. We will, once we have this plan in place, we will be doing a lot of trail renovations. And in fact, we're happy to say we're expanding our natural surface trails crew, specifically with a team that will be designated for trail renovations and improvements. So that's park-wide, park system-wide, not just Wheaton, of course, but we hear that feedback, and we will be doing a lot of renovations on the trail. More discussion about mountain biking. Chuck, anything being done to change or highlight the Harper Cabin?
The Harper Cabin is part of the Nature Center complex. It's a cultural resource that's interpreted by Nature Center staff. There aren't any plans for any immediate improvements for the Harper Cabin, other than overall Nature Center improvements.
Okay. Someone is saying trails need better signage and overall mapping.
We wholeheartedly concur. One of the recommendations in the plan is to create a comprehensive sign plan for the park to include wayfinding, directional, orientation, meaning you are here maps, with, helping people to know where they are in the park and how they can get to different areas of the park from where they are. Regulatory signing, warning signs, interpretive signs, everything. We do agree there needs to be a plan, and there will be a plan for a comprehensive sign plan for the park.
Question about benches. Will there be benches on the new trail construction? I think there'll be. I think that's a great comment, and when we do design trails, we do look for opportunities to put in benches, as well as other things like interpretive signs, and the wayfinding that Chuck mentioned, as well as bike racks. So I think benches are a great idea, and certainly look for opportunities to include benches in the design.
Yeah, seating is one of the things that we heard loud and clear from the community throughout the park, including trails. It's something that definitely serves older adults who need places to rest during their walk. So yes, we certainly recognize benches and seating areas are very important, and we need to add more.
We're getting a lot of comments about not paving, requesting that we don't pave the gravel road on Pine Lake. I think we can take that feedback into account. I know that during our public outreach for this, we did hear that it is very rutted and wet, and we heard requests for paving Pine Lake. I think Pine Lake Trail, we currently sort of treat it like it's a paved trail in terms of our mapping and our system, but it's not a paved trail that you would really be comfortable riding a bike on, right? It's very bumpy. So I think there seems to be, pretty strong agreement on that, or I don't know if there's agreement on it, but there's certainly several people that are expressing that. So we can look into kind of different ways to treat that Pine Lake piece. Now, one of the reasons, we're not recommending a lot of paved trails in the park, but because that area is already impacted, it was a little bit more of more minimal impact if we were to pave it. So that's why that was recommended.
All right, maybe one more question, and
Yeah,
then we'll move on.
Will there be bike parking in the park?
Yes, we are identifying locations for parking needs in several areas of the park.
Yes, indeed. All right. Well, there's a lot of discussion, but hitting on some of the topics that we've already addressed. I think. Yeah,
and whatever we weren't able to do live, of course, we will respond in writing and post later on our project website. Next up is the 27-acre Equestrian Center site. Many people do not associate this facility with Wheaton Regional Park, but it is. It's a privately managed facility on MNC PPC parkland. They offer boarding as well as riding lessons and therapeutic riding programming and activities. It's one of 5 equestrian facilities on parkland in Montgomery County. The short-term recommendation is to continue this property as an equestrian facility. We will continue to fund improvements for public safety and comfort. We will also add some new trails, as I mentioned earlier. Long-term, we think this 27-acre site offers an opportunity to add facilities that serve more people in the community. We feel like there might be a point a decision-making point in the future where a major public investment might be needed to keep this as an equestrian facility. And when we reach that point, we feel like that's an opportunity for us to rethink this 27-acre site. It is the likely location for the Brookside, future Brookside Nature Center, and perhaps also an urban agricultural incubator and learning center. I'm going to pause here again to answer any questions about the Equestrian Center site.
So far, just one person saying, please, please, please do not take the Equestrian Center. It's one of the only affordable options in our area. It's an amazing facility the way it is, and would be a horrible loss if taken away. Another comment that that was considered back in the 1980s Master Plan Committee as well. Other people articulating the importance of the center. Someone asking for clarification if we're thinking about moving the nature center across the street to that area.
Yeah, I'll get to that in a few minutes. Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. More support for the Equestrian Center. Question about, how specific the ideas are for using it, or are they just draft at this point?
Draft.
Okay, more support for the Equestrian Center and desire for picnic areas near the Equestrian Center.
Yeah, we did outreach at the Equestrian Center. That was one of our places where we conducted intercept surveys. And one of the surprising things that I observed while there is that not only do people use the Equestrian Center site for horseback riding and horse-based activities, but a lot of people park there and just walk around the fence line to enjoy the bucolic experience, the setting of the Equestrian Center. Families come and the kids watch the horses, and I'm sure the families talk about horses while they're walking around. That was very surprising to me, how many people really do park there and just experience the facility, and they're not there for horse-based activities. So yes, I think there are opportunities to add some picnic tables for those types of users. I think that is a great idea.
Okay, someone agrees with the comment from Chuck. So true. Is very, very busy during COVID. It continues now. And a lot of support for keeping the stables. One person asked something, Chuck, that I think maybe you can speak to now, or you can choose to speak to later, which is what's the time frame for all of this?
Yeah, so the Wheaton Regional Park Master Plan is sort of a long-term vision, the 20-year outlook. We do think a number of improvements are so overdue that they will make it into the next cycle of the 6-year CIP. But a number of these recommendations are much longer term, 5, 10 plus years.
And the Equestrian Center has a current lease that would be recognized. Is that correct?
Right. The current operator has a lease agreement with us. We recognize the value that it provides and the service that it provides in this area of the county. But it is an aging facility. It was one of the first areas developed back in the 60s. So a lot of the infrastructure on that site is very, very old and in need of upgrading. And like I said, when we reach a point where we think a major infusion of cash will be needed to keep the existing facility where it is, I think we need to think about other potential uses or maybe co-uses. So maybe the site becomes a joint equestrian center and something else is another thing that could be considered.
Okay. This is going back to the timing question, Chuck. And again, maybe you want to save this, but what area do you think will be funded first for upgrades? And then the commenter says, please say Shorefield.
Yeah, well, yeah, there are a number of improvements that we think are candidate worthy for the next 6-year CIP, including some parking lot improvements in the Shorefield area, the sport courts in the Shorefield area, and the food truck area, and also the new large group picnic area in the Shorefield area. We think could all be candidate improvements in the next 6-year CIP. In the Rabini complex, the sport courts, the basketball courts, the pickleball courts, and the soccer court, we think is short term. The dog park potentially is in the next 6 years as well. The skate park, the master plan or facility plan for the skate park will be in the next 6 years, but the development of the park is really at the mercy of funding, finding the appropriate amount of funding to make that happen, including potential public-private partnerships. So that's longer term, but developing the program of requirements and what that facility could look like will be in the next couple of years.
Okay, I will just say out loud that there's a lot of support for the Equestrian Center. I don't see any sort of topics we haven't hit on. But just more clarification on the timing, right? Is that decision point 10 years, 20 years, 5 years, like ballpark?
Yeah, 5 to 10 years. You know, we're not anticipating the current operator to cease operations anytime soon, but you never know. I mean, we just need to be ready with a plan if and when that current operator chooses to cease operating. It's possible, you know, it could be short term, it may be long term, but we just need to be ready for that possibility as part of the master plan.
All right, I think you can proceed, Chuck.
Okay.
There's a couple of questions about park access, but well, I can save those until we get through.
Okay. I'm now going to talk about the Brookside Nature Center. This also was one of the early facilities developed back in the 60s, and as a result, it's one of the oldest nature centers in Montgomery County. It's in an area of the park where expanding the nature center really just isn't possible. It's really an environmentally and natural resource constrained site. There's too much steep slope on one side, and of course Brookside Gardens on the other, so there's really no opportunity to expand it. So short term, the nature center will stay at its current location and will continue to invest in improvements, mostly related to public safety and comfort, but also to enhance nature center programming. Long term, we think there's an opportunity to find a new location for it, perhaps at the Equestrian Center site, but maybe somewhere else in the park. And at that time, we will also rename it. A lot of comments from the community and also from our internal staff that you know, there's a lot of confusion between Brookside Gardens and Brookside Nature Center. And if and when we find a new location for it, we will rename it as something else so that there's no longer confusion with Brookside Gardens. And we're also, of course, looking at ways to improve bicycle and pedestrian access to the Nature Center. And we will be partnering with Montgomery County Department of Transportation to implement those improvements along Glen Allen Road. So I'll now pause and field any questions about the Nature Center.
Okay, I'll take Nature Center questions. And you mentioned access, so I'll go back to a question we had. Darren, can you go back to bike ped access and exactly how it will be enhanced by the plan? Will there be more facilities recommended for implementation by MCDOT? So the way we're sort of handling that is because it's not a county DOT plan, it's a park plan. What we're planning to do is sort of identify some of the access challenges that we've heard throughout the planning process. And when we heard, you know, we've certainly heard about that quite a lot, the challenge of walking challenge of having bus access and the challenge of safe bicycling to the different activity centers in the park. And so what we've done is we've sort of identified where some of those challenges are. Chuck and others have been working with our partners at MCDOT, SHA, and we've learned that they're doing a new ride-on transit access plan. So we will participate in that, share the information that we've gathered as part of this process, and generally make sure that we are working closely with the transportation agencies to alert them of some of the issues, the park access. I think they're beginning to hear that from the community. So we haven't encountered any, sort of surprise or resistance from the transportation departments. They're willing partners to work with us on this, understanding that Wheaton is the regional park next door, and people need to be able to get to it safely. So I think in terms of plan recommendations, we'll focus on identifying some of those needs. And then in terms of implementation, we'll be working with the relevant agencies. Sort of how we're handling that, and a lot of sort of interesting ideas that have come up that we will need to work through with the transportation staff, to look at what's really most optimal, most feasible. I know I saw another comment about bus access or shuttle access. I would say that's another thing that we talked a lot about. We definitely hear you that is a need. We are again working with the transit agency, and we'll be talking with them as they sort of rethink their bus routes. But we've also talked about the possibilities of doing some pilot shuttle programs from the metro, to sort of test the waters about how well used that would be, and some other things. So we definitely recognize that as a need, and we are working on those things. I would say both in the scope of the plan and both just more broadly as we focus on park access in our department.
Yeah, I'll also add that the Glenmont area is one of the pilot areas of the county for what they're calling on-demand shuttle service, where people can call for a bus using an app on their phone. And within the general Glenmont Wheaton area, this shuttle can take them to wherever they want to go within the area. We've talked to the transit folks about maybe including Wheaton Regional Park in that area for on-demand transit service. So that's a future discussion as well.
Okay, comment about need for more parking. Okay, answered the one. Okay, any comments about the nature center? All right, go ahead, Chuck.
All right. Next up is Brookside Gardens. This is already a world-class, world-renowned, if not world-renowned, regionally renowned botanical garden. It's been designed primarily for visitors to arrive by car. So that's one of the things that we heard from the community is we want to get here by walking and biking and transit, and we hear you. So Brookside Gardens has its own master plan. It was approved by the board in 2004. It also has its own dedicated funding source, separate from the rest of Wheaton Regional Park. The park master plan recommends continuing to implement the recommendations of the 2004 master plan for Brookside Gardens. But we're also proposing to add a new shared use path that will get people from Glen Allen through the parking lot area to the visitor center. That is one significant recommendation. That's a change to the Brookside Gardens master plan. And as we've already discussed, we're coordinating with DOT on proposing a number of improvements for bike ped access along Glen Allen Avenue to help people get to the visitor center entrance. And then of course, the shared use path will get them to the visitor center where there will be ample bicycle parking. I'll now field any questions about Brookside Gardens. The other thing that I'll mention is in terms of Brookside Gardens is almost like a park within a park, and a lot of people consider it separate and distinct from Wheaton Regional Park, but it really is part of Wheaton Regional Park. So one of the challenges ahead of us is to brand Wheaton Regional Park as one park, and the branding of Wheaton Regional Park includes Brookside Gardens. It's not distinct and separate, but part of Wheaton Regional Park. So that in terms of signage and wayfinding and branding, that will be a future issue that we need to grapple with.
Okay, getting comments about no food or dogs or bikes in Brookside Gardens. I think that is currently the policy, and I'm not aware of any recommended change, but Chuck, you can speak to that.
Yeah, so Brookside Gardens, is designed and intended to showcase, the botanical garden and everything that it does to manage this facility is to that end and protect the resources in that. So they really feel like meaning Brookside Gardens management, they really feel like dogs are not an appropriate thing to introduce into Brookside Gardens for a number of reasons, and also food for the same reason. They don't allow picnicking in Brookside Gardens. However, the 2004 facility plan does include a recommendation to consider concessions in Brookside Gardens and maybe even a restaurant. So that is something that I know is on the table as a potential future improvement in Brookside Gardens. And then, of course, bikes is just, it's intended as a walking experience in Brookside Gardens, and introducing bikes really just isn't an appropriate use in a pedestrian, largely pedestrian environment.
We have someone who identifies as a cyclist who agrees with that. And then someone says, I approve of bike ped access to the gardens. Any ideas on making sure the bikes stay out of the garden? Lots of bikes went into the gardens during COVID and caused some damage to the garden. Yeah, again, I think that this is really going to be a lot of education and providing adequate bike parking. So we're already working with the Brookside Garden staff on making sure that that they're comfortable with the location of bike racks, and so we can really emphasize that it's a transition point from the visitor center entrance. Before you get into the garden, you dismount, and we'll have to do that through signs. We'll have to do that through, just attentiveness of our staff. There'll be some need for that. We will work with, our volunteers and our partners to make sure the people understand the new rules and are respecting, the existing users and uses, and understand, where those lines are. And it may not be perfect. I think. Bicycling is not allowed now, and we're hearing that it does sometimes occur. So I'm not going to promise that it never would, but that I think through education and the kind of emphasizing that bicyclists need to be good neighbors to have access to the park the way we want them to. Right? So that's I think really what it will boil down to. But in concrete terms, it's about providing that bike parking, saying this is where the biking ends and this is where the garden begins. To that point, we're also talking about making a improved transition point from the paved trail entrance on the other side. Thanks, Chuck. To make that more of a welcoming plaza area and a better transition point for people to get off their bikes, maybe have a seat and relax before they enter the gardens. Will Brookside Gardens be expanded?
No, the current fence line is the established boundary for Brookside Gardens. So no, there are no plans to enlarge it or expand it. No.
Will bike parking be placed in the parking lot for people who wish to bike to the park and then walk around? Yes, absolutely. Thank you. A recommendation to look at the Sculpture Garden in Trenton, New Jersey. Wonderful garden. That points could be used for Brookside. Brookside Gardens, wonderful as it is. Chuck, did you mention something about concessions in the gardens? I think there's someone saying
Yes.
that.
Yeah, one of the things in the 2004 master plan for Brookside Gardens is identifying a location for maybe a restaurant, a small restaurant with food service. Brookside Gardens does allow food service for special events, including weddings and other types of rentals. And they do have an approved list of caterers that serve those events, but there isn't casual dining allowed in Brookside Gardens. It has to be an approved vendor right now that can serve food in Brookside Gardens.
Okay, more comments about as soon as food comes to Brookside, there'll be a lot of trash. Answer that. Let's see. Give people a chance to make more comments about Brookside. A couple of things we've touched on. Someone says, "Will food trucks be allowed?" Please, no.
Not in Brookside Gardens. I don't think food trucks are being considered for Brookside Gardens, but the Rubini Complex and Shorefield, definitely.
Someone is recommending similar to Glenstone Museum, an outside patio for light food is one of the few.
I think something on that scale is something that Brookside Garden staff would consider, yes. A small patio overlook or something like that, yep.
Okay. Yes, to expand on that after last rain. Sorry, I'm just making sure this is comment about some trail erosion. Okay. Needs to be addressed ASAP. We will submit that to our park manager. Thank you. Okay, Chuck, I think you're good for Brookside.
Okay. There are many other topics in the master plan that we just didn't have time to get to tonight. In the interest of time, we didn't dive into any of these topics, but there will be recommendations for natural resources, aquatic resources, including streams and wetlands and Pine Lake, the management of Pine Lake as a stormwater management facility, cultural resources. As you know, someone brought up the Harper Cabin. I did include a photo of it here. There will be recommendations for cultural resources in the park. There'll also be recommendations for public safety and what we call CPTED, which is crime prevention through environmental design. So, designing the park in a way that discourages criminal activity. We'll address infrastructure and utilities, parking and circulation, maintenance and operations, how our maintenance staff maintain the existing facilities and also the new facilities. And then, of course, artwork and design is a really important component. As I mentioned early on, we really feel like Wheaton Regional Park could include artwork that celebrates the diverse community that surrounds the park. So that is definitely going to be a big recommendation. I just didn't have time to get into it tonight. And that concludes our presentation tonight. The project website is at the bottom. As I mentioned earlier, sometime in the next week or so, we are going to be creating a town hall where people can leave more comments about the park and the park master plan. And you have my contact information there. So we do have time for more questions and answer, about 15 minutes or so. So if there are any groups of comments that we think we can address in the next 15 minutes, let's do it.
Okay, yes, I would say, I think we've hit broadly on the majority. There's, as I kind of alluded to throughout, there was a lot of discussion about different things, a lot of discussion about, equestrian compatibility of equestrians and mountain bikes, a lot of discussion about the challenges of removing ball fields. There was one person early on had a process question, said they were part of the Kent Mill Jewish focus group and wanted to answer the survey, but found the questions difficult to answer, including about what the three favorite items were in the park, and felt like they didn't have the opportunity to sort of elaborate on their answer. And I think this is partly a response to the notion of removing some of the ball fields, but the broader question was, can you just speak to how the information from the focus group was maybe integrated into the plan, some of the pieces that that you heard and that came into the plan, and how some of the decisions were made that maybe didn't reflect some of the things that we heard.
Right. So the focus group meetings that we did with help from our external consultant, Skio, where we met with the Jewish community in Kent Mill and also the Hispanic Latino group and the Asian American youth, the high school students. We had meetings with them back in the spring, and our hope was that we would sometime over the summer circle back to them and tell them what we were able to address and what we weren't able to address, but we just weren't able to schedule those meetings during the summer. So we felt like because this meeting was scheduled and was upcoming, this would be the opportunity for those focus groups to provide additional input. That being said, because we are delaying the plan, I think there's an opportunity for us to have additional conversations over the fall with those groups if it's so desired. And I encourage anyone who feels like it would be helpful for us to circle back with those groups to send me an email, or Melissa Chotner an email to facilitate maybe some more conversations about what we heard from those groups.
Thanks, Chuck. Going back through the comments. Okay, so I will summarize. I think the themes are sort of food and other uses like biking in the botanical garden. So a number of comments articulating that preference, which again, I don't think there's any recommendation to change. I don't know, Chuck, if you can speak to birding. The Montgomery Bird Club commented that, thank you for acknowledging the interest of the park to birders. Birding is also very active in the Shorefield area and near and around Pine Lake. If just you want to kind of talk about what you heard through the planning process about birding and what the plan, what people interested in birding might sort of get out of the plan.
Yeah, that was a really popular comment. It was mostly related to the forest and wooded area on the interactive map, but also in the survey. And that's why we are designating the interior trail of the forested area as hiking only, as a quiet space for not only nature programming, but also for birding, interior dwelling species that only nest in the interior of a large forest. So that was the thinking there. I personally wasn't aware that Pine Lake was also a popular birding location, so I'll have to have additional conversation with our natural resources staff about how to maximize the experience of birders around Pine Lake. The improvements that we're proposing for Pine Lake are mostly related to improving natural resource education, but also the fishing experience. We're not proposing any major improvements around Pine Lake that would disrupt, I don't think, the experience of birders. It's not going to be a social gathering space, but it will attract groups of fishermen, but I don't think it's going to become a social gathering space.
Okay. Somebody asked about funding for the adventure park, and where that funding would come from, and I think I'll just note that we've got Chuck mentioned the PDF, or excuse me, that's sort of jargony, the funding source for this plan. The notion of the adventure park would be a separate capital improvement item. And I think one of the kind of the key things that we heard in our outreach was that Wheaton, deserves some investments, right? Some significant investments. That it is a regional park, and has and needs to have sort of regional features, right? Regional activity centers, but also things that we heard from the local community that they wanted, and opportunities for teenagers and skateboarding were things that we certainly heard a lot about. So we wanted to make sure that the plan included something that would, have that sort of premier world-class feel in the same way that Brookside Gardens does. Hopefully that answers that question. Right, there, that one, okay. And let me just go, I went back up to see what I missed, so let me go back to see if there's anything that's come in here. I think some requests for kind of follow up on the Equestrian Center question. It'd be useful to have a timeline on changes.
Yeah, so the plan will include an implementation chapter and a proposed sequence of improvements. But it'll be very general in terms of things we think need to be done immediately for public safety and comfort. Immediate term. Short term would be things we think are just easily implementable. It's things that we can do quickly. They're low-hanging fruit type of improvements, not super expensive. And then there's the long-term improvements that are going to require a little bit more detailed planning and more thinking in terms of how it might be funded and perhaps even phased over time. So yeah, the plan will include sort of a general timeline of improvements and sequence of improvements.
Okay, thanks, Chuck. Comment, you didn't mention adult activities like balance bar, chinning bar, planks, etc.
The Shorefield area has a new adult fitness station off the upper parking lot. So we feel like that is serving the older population in some way. But I do think the Adventure Sports Complex might be another place where we consider adding some fitness equipment as well. So yeah, I agree that there might be opportunities to better serve the older populations. Yeah.
A request for further coordination with Montgomery Bird Club and Audubon Natural Society about best birding areas, and again, that kind of the food truck compatibility question.
Okay.
The really good comment about balancing the needs of boys, such as a skate park, and girls versus, such as the equestrian facility. Chuck, as you know, I have comments on that, but do you want to kind of speak to how the plan is balancing those things?
Yeah, we certainly recognize that parks need to serve, not only better serve teens in general, but some of the improvements may appear to be more focused on boys, but we do recognize that we do need to address the needs of teen girls. When we were talking to the Asian American group about how they use Wheaton Regional Park, a couple things came up. One of the things was they enjoyed the trail system. Teens really enjoy walking along the trails and using the trails as a social gathering space. But the other thing we heard was, they enjoy just hanging out and watching other park users. So as part of the Adventure Sports Complex, there will be a very large social component where people can observe from above what's happening in that space, and there'll be comfort stations and charging stations for electronic devices and so forth that meet the needs of all teens, and also swings. We were talking about one of the things that teen girls particularly enjoy is hanging out in in a unique setting, an Instagrammable location. And we feel like the social gathering space of the adventure sports complex might be that opportunity to provide some unique features, including an art wall, an interactive art wall, and some swings. But the skate parks are used by girls. The parkour and bouldering wall are gender neutral, I think, as is the traffic safety garden and the bicycle skills area. So, I think we're doing a good job meeting the needs of all potential park users of that age group.
Yeah, thanks, Chuck. Somebody weighed in saying, having been at skate parks recently, I'm seeing more and more girls. And I just say, from talking to folks that design these facilities, this is really top of mind, trying to create and skillfully design a facility that really communicates through its design and through its management that this is a park for everybody. And this is not just for elite and maybe sort of competitive and macho users. This creates lots of areas for beginners, lots of areas for a more relaxed style. And you do that through design. You do that by creating a welcoming environment through being really intentional about it. You don't get there by accident and just sort of hoping everybody comes. You do that by being intentional about the way you design it. And that's something that folks that are designing these kind of facilities are really in tune with right now. And when we were talking with them, we're really excited that was kind of where we wanted to go and create a really welcoming environment for boys and girls. And as Chuck mentioned, just a public realm that's enjoyable to spend time in and hang out for everybody.
I'll also make an anecdotal comment that my son used to be a rock climber, and we used to go to earth treks in Rockville. And honestly, my observations of that facility were that there were many more women and girls using that climbing facility than there were boys and men. I'd say it was 60-40 if I had to guess, women to men. It's heavily used by women and girls. So I do feel like the challenge facilities, the bouldering wall, the obstacle course, really are gender neutral. They're really intended for both genders and all genders.
Okay, we got a couple of minutes left. Oh, are you leaving the train alone?
Yes, the train will remain. We are proposing some modest improvements to enhance the train experience, including maybe some art and some new signage to help orient people while they're on the train, or even entertain them while they're on the train to enhance the experience. But no, the train will definitely remain.
Comment, two good comments, actually. One is, FYI, youth involvement is one of the fastest growing segments of outdoor passive use. We would probably say contemplative. And it's a very clear trend in birding. Careful not to relegate kids in planning to skate parks and Instagram hotspots. I think that's valid. And I think that's certainly something that we've, tried to, accommodate lots of different experiences. Wheaton, it is a large park, and it does have opportunities to have a lot of different ways to experience the park. And certainly we've gotten the feedback that we need to be more intentional about providing teen gathering spaces, but that doesn't mean that couldn't include bird watching and the wooded areas. So I think that's a great comment. Thank you. Was there any thought given to a zip line similar to what Go8 manages in Sandy Springs? We did talk about it.
Yeah, I do think the adventure sports complex could accommodate a few other unique features. I don't know if a zip line is one of them, but it's certainly something we can discuss.
Yeah. And comment request for a new tunnel for the train. Kids love it. So
a new tunnel.
maybe we can leave it there. And if you had any kind of final remarks, Chuck.
No, it's 9 o'clock, and I want to be sensitive to everyone's time. I want to thank you for joining us at tonight's meeting. Just to reiterate, anything that we weren't able to get to live tonight during the meeting, we will certainly address in writing and post to the project website. So we want to make sure we're addressing all the comments, and we appreciate everyone's time. And we also are going to create another town hall opportunity where people can comment on specific areas or recommendations in the plan, and then people can comment on their comments and so forth. So we will be setting that up in the next week or so.
All right. Well, thanks for everybody's great comments, and have a great night.